And then if someone would let me know when to start, that'd be great.
Show that we are live on YouTube. And so we're ready. If you are, Lindsay.
All right. Does it matter that there's no attendees yet?
Oh yeah, I'd let that populate for a second.
Don't worry, there's two of you. It's cool.
It's still showing that we're in practice session and I'm not seeing attendees yet.
Yeah, I think Tori needs to start the meeting.
Got it. Okay, we should be live now.
All right. Okay, welcome to the January 13th, 2022 BAR Small Virtual Meeting. My name is Lindsay Van Slambrook, and the other board members present today are Glenn Gardner, Bill Huey, Julia Martin, and Phil Morrison. City staff present today are Frankie Pinto, Allison Hill DeLong, and Tori Parrish. The order of the meeting today will be as follows. We'll start with an introduction and overview of the project by city staff to the board and for the benefit of the public. This will be followed by the applicant presentation. At this time, the applicant will have 10 minutes to present the project and answer any questions of the board. Any and all presenters should state their name clearly for the record, and persons affiliated with the project, such as owners, developers, designers, and consultants, should all speak during this portion rather than public comment. By ordinance, the board can ask questions of the applicant at any time, but by custom, we do so on the heels of the applicant's presentation. This will be followed by a period of public comment. If you are speaking from the public, again, please state your name clearly for the record. Public comment will be followed by city staff comments and recommendations. And following this will be a period of applicant response. There will be a 5-minute time limit here, and this is an opportunity to clarify or respond to anything raised during public comment or city staff comments and recommendations. It is not an opportunity to reopen your presentation. Following the applicant response period, public comment will be closed and the applicant's presentation will be closed. The following items have been withdrawn or deferred this evening. Agenda item number 1, 540 King Street, and agenda item number 5, 61 Reed Street. Finally, please limit your comments to architecture only. Comments related to zoning, such as parking, traffic, lot coverage, and livability concerns are not within the purview of this board and cannot be voiced here. Now I will turn it over to Frankie for some virtual meeting protocol.
Okay, can everybody see my screen?
You can.
All right, so we have the Zoom link and phone number for this. Written instructions were to be received by the board in advance of the meeting and will be acknowledged into record and summarized. If this is a concern, you're encouraged to sign up, which we did have some people sign up. So staff will control the PowerPoint presentations. That includes everything submitted by the applicant by the deadline in accordance with submittal requirements. Applicants simply need to ask staff to advance to the next slide during the presentation. Applicant, staff, and board members are required to give their names whenever speaking. Video and microphone have been disabled for all attendees. Attendees, not board members or staff, will only be given the capabilities to speak when they are called on during public comment period. Chat and Q&A functions have been disabled for everyone. Public comment, the applicants, all team members, and the public have been required to register, indicate the project they wish to comment on, and submit any documents in advance of the meeting. Just as in an in-person meeting, all applicants heard today are part of the public meeting format. If you have registered and will speak during the public comment portion of the meeting, you will need to state your name and address for the record. Those members of the public that have registered will be called in order by project. Staff will call on registered members of the public to speak for each project. Unregistered members of the public who raise their hands will not be called on. Board members will be polled by the chairperson for comments and their vote on a motion. Each member when voting should respond yay in favor or nay not in favor. The chair shall reread the motion verbatim for accuracy. If a board member needs to recuse, he or she will be temporarily removed from the meeting and placed back in the meeting at the start of the next agenda item. If the board needs to go into executive session, they will call into a separate conference line, and all video and audio on Zoom will be temporarily turned off until they are ready to return to a regular meeting. Results and staff comments will be posted on the city website at www.charleston-sc.gov/bar. These proceedings are being recorded and broadcast to the City of Charleston's YouTube channel. The first item we have on the agenda, is 540 King Street, which was deferred by staff. That's the markup review.
All right, we're on agenda item number 2 for Lennox Street. Frankie, I'll turn it over to you.
Item number 2 is number 4 Lennox Street, TMS 463-0802-020. Request complete demolition of historic structure. Here we've got an arrow showing the location of the property. Existing site photos. The Google Street views were before number 2 Lennox was demoed. Lennox Street, and then Lennox Street looking toward 526. These are the Sanborn Maps from 1944 and 1955. And we did include the 1944 Sanborn zoomed out a little bit, showing this larger developed property. Just thought it was interesting how it had originally been laid out. The historic documents were provided by Kevin Eberly. This is, I think he said it was from 1948 view of the house. And then a bird's eye view, and the house is circled in red. And I'm going to turn it over to the applicant. Can you open it?
Can you hear me now?
We can.
Okay. All right. Sanford Byers with Byers Collaborative, the architect on the project. We think the house was probably built in 1942, around that time, and it was used as a duplex. Hasn't been occupied in about 5 to 6 years, but it was a duplex before. The entire siding on the outside of the house has completely deteriorated. It's rotted or just destroyed by termite damage. The base of the walls you can see are open, and all of the sills have been destroyed as well. And the ends of the 2x4 structure also shows damage. It's hard to tell exactly how far that damage goes up, but it looks like it goes, pretty far from where from what we can see. The house, the entire floor system on the first floor and second floor have completely faulted. And it's impossible really to get under the building because it's too low to the ground, and also because of the major structure being on the ground. The contractor opened the floor up somewhat, and there was a large drop girder under there that may have been added at another point in time. But that's completely faulted as well. So there's really no structural member that we could actually use to pick this up enough to give it a new foundation. Or there's really no structural integrity to add structure to or sister on or any of that kind of thing. The roof is from the attic. You can see that a good bit of the structure there has been destroyed by a fire at some point. So it doesn't appear to be open at any point, but the extent of damage from the fire is pretty severe. Appears that all the windows have been removed, so the integrity or the historic value of the windows has already been removed. The porches have been altered. As you can see in that photograph, it was a double porch at some point. The front porch is basically falling off of the building, and it's just being held up by the 2x4s that are on the concrete of the first of the porch.
Mr. Byers, I'm sorry, my computer was freezing. What slide would you like me to be on?
What slide?
Just let me know when you want me to stop.
Okay, let's stop right there. I was talking about the porch. You can see that it's completely pulled away from the body of the building, and these 2x4s have just been put under there to shore it up. So all of that is very precarious. It's basically ready to fall off. Okay, go ahead. This is where you can see the foundation, and again, all the rim joist sills are completely rotted. Okay. Same here. It's interesting that the siding on the west side is just a lap siding, and the rest of it is the German siding with the scallop, whatever. So I don't know, at some point in time, that western side may have been resided, maybe because of the, the condition of the wood from the heat on the western side. Okay. Shows the interior, the damage of the fire damage. Okay. And that shows some fire soot damage. Looks like there's been a little bit of structure put back up there. Okay. Yeah, this is showing that 1944 Sanborn. This is the first Sanborn that it shows up on. That really concludes my presentation. Do you all have any questions of me?
Thank you, Mr. Byers. Are there any questions for the applicant?
Sandy, can you kind of clarify the chain of custody of the property? Has the current owner purchased it recently or had it for a while?
She purchased it about 5 years ago.
Thank you.
Fillmore Wilson, I have one quick question. What's the roof closure? Is it metal or?
No, it is fiberglass shingles or asphalt shingles.
Okay, thank you.
Uh-huh.
Any other board questions for the applicant at this time?
I have a quick question for staff. The construction date of 1942. Is that confirmed?
That was the earliest date that we could confirm. And I believe that was from the county tax records.
Okay, thanks.
All right, we'll move on to public comment. Allison. Is Allison? Do we have anyone? speaking
Yes.
in the public here?
We do. We have Anna Catherine Carroll with the Preservation Society of Charleston. Let's see.
Go ahead. What's the address first?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. Anna Catherine Carroll with the Preservation Society of Charleston. The Preservation Society really appreciated the opportunity to visit the site this morning and was encouraged to observe significant retention of form, material, and detail, all of which make this building an important survivor on this historic streetscape where so much has already been lost. While this building undoubtedly suffers from the ramifications of long-term neglect, we feel confidently in its ability to be successfully rehabilitated and elevated with preservation of historic form and character-defining details. And we would respectfully ask that this request for demolition be denied. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna.
We also have April Wood from the Historic Charleston Foundation.
So you can't rent out the accessory structure for short-term rental because
Can you hear me?
We can hear you, April.
Sorry. April Wood, Historic Charleston Foundation. HCF has reviewed the application for demolition of the historic structure of 4 Lenox Street. We are sorry to see this historic structure in the neglected condition it is in today. Despite its poor condition, 4 Lenox Street retains its historic form and detailing. Additionally, it is an example of the former architectural character of the city before I-26 cut through the neighborhood. We respectfully recommend denial of this application for full demolition. Thank you.
Thank you, April.
that.
And we have
And
one
then
more.
You could also-
We
you
have
could also
Kevin
rent the house
Everly.
out If you weren't, I think, on site. Like,
Am I there?
Yep, we can hear you, Kevin.
So my name is Kevin Eberly, and I'm concerned about, of course, any buildings up in the Uptown, and wanted mainly to chime in on the correct history of the building. It most certainly was not built in 1944. It was actually built in 1922 by Leopold Weatherhorn, who developed that entire segment that you see in the Sanborn Maps. He sold it in 1922 after having developed the plat and filed the plat for the area. In 1923, it shows up with a 2-story house in the ward books. One of the difficulties maybe in doing a little bit of research, not a lot, but is that it was not originally part of Lenox Street until much, much later. And you actually have to look it up as an unnamed alley on the west side of Meeting Street for the first several decades. And it shows up every year from 1923 forward. It also shows up in the 1929 Sanborn Maps, which are very readily available. So I'm not sure why the owner didn't apparently do that. But in any event, it's 100 years old, not from the 1940s. And given so I would just, I guess, echo as far as the merits of the application, the same things from the Preservation Society and the Foundation, and also add that I think it would be a real shame, given the location immediately next to the future low line. It certainly does have a lot of value, and I think could easily justify the repair work. And it's not like it's in a like the finances would be so off kiltered as to not justify the extra work. So I'm opposed.
Is that it, Kevin?
Yes.
All right, thank you. Allison, I think that's it for public comment, but all right. Frankie, if you'll give us city staff comments and recommendations, please.
This is the last example of this building form on this street and still retains many of its character defining features, including exposed rafter ends, full width front porch and some original siding, and the metal roof on the front porch. We recommend completing necessary repairs and weatherization of the building. This would include repairing the roof, installing missing or broken windows, removing vegetation and plywood on the facade, and any necessary repairs to shield the building from the elements. In a rehabilitation scenario, a proper preservation plan should be submitted to BAR or BAR staff for approval. The plan would include an engineering report that goes further than the report submitted to determine what historic fabric is viable. A subject report such as in this middle with a scale of 1 to 10 is insufficient. Denial for staff recommendation is a denial for demolition with staff comments noted.
Thank you, Frankie. Mr. Byers, did you want to respond to any or clarify anything raised during public comment or in the city staff comments and recommendations?
Yes. I'm assuming that the board has been able to see the engineering report that was done by Rosen.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, I failed to mention that his opinion is there is less than 5% of fabric left in the building. And I agree with that as well. It's not going to be able to be renovated. It's just going to have to be rebuilt because there really isn't anything there to save or tie into or I think it's unrealistic to think it can be renovated.
Thank you, Mr. Byers. All right, public comment and the applicant presentation is closed, and we will now move into board discussion and a vote.
Okay, I'll start. I generally agree with staff and also with the Preservation Society on this. And I absolutely recognize what the applicant's saying about how difficult it will be to do this. And I also recognize that it will have to be elevated to comply with current FEMA regulations. But I believe that the value in that form and those details and materials is high, and it's indicative of the typical house that was built in that little development in the early part of the 20th century. I think it would be a shame to erase it, like so many up there have been erased. And I wish that previous owners and even the current owner had taken measures to preserve it earlier, and it wouldn't be quite the tall order that it is now, but I still think it's worth keeping as a piece of the city's history.
Fillmore Wilson here. I agree with the comments of the Preservation Societies and Julia. I think, and I certainly understand the idea that in a narrow sense or a more traditional sense, a renovation of this structure is not exactly the way you would term it, but there's more than just material here, as has been mentioned before. It's the value of the form of this house and the detailing and the material palette. And it is one of the few examples left in this, certainly on this street and in this early development. So I would favor saving it.
Glenn Gardner, I echo the comments already made about the form. and the really kind of special feel that the structure has as the one that's left on the street from others that were there. And I understand the condition of it, but I don't think bulldozing it is the right answer.
Lindsay, and I'm in agreement with staff comments and those of the Preservation Society and Historic Charleston Foundation and my fellow board members. I think seeing the structure, it's really fortunate that we actually still have it there as an example of the architecture that was on that street. And so I am also not in favor of demolition.
This is Bill. I don't really have anything to add to what my fellow board members have said. I agree.
Right, so I'll make a motion for denial of demolition with staff comments noted.
All right, we have a motion on the floor for denial for demolition with staff comments noted. Do I have a second?
Bill Moore, I'll second.
Thank you so more. I'll put it to a vote. Bill,
Yeah, in favor.
Glenn,
Yeah, in favor.
Julia,
Yay in favor?
Fillmore.
Yay, in favor.
And the chair votes with the majority and the motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Byers.
Thank you all for your time.
All right, we now are on agenda item number 3, 48 and 50 Cooper Street. Frankie, if you provide us with a overview of the project.
Okay, 48 and 50 Cooper Street, TMS 459-0601-015 is requesting a complete demolition of historic structure. We have a date of circa 1880, or at least one of the homes, and this is in the historic materials demolition purview. This is an aerial showing the location at the corner of Cooper Street and America Street. This is the two homes on the corner, looking from Cooper Street. And this is the other angle from Cooper Street. And then this is a view from America. And then looking away from the house down America. And then just another context photo. Here we have the Sanborns from 1902 and 1951. And a historic photo of the home. Or at least of, that's 48. And then I've got the applicant presentation.
Ms. Bostic, you are on mute. Ms. Bostic, we are.
Can you hear me?
Yes, but it is echoing.
Yeah, I hear it. Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, excellent. Okay, are you asking me to speak at this moment or?
Yes, ma'am. You can go ahead with your presentation.
Yes, ma'am. Hello, everyone. I'm speaking on behalf of Ms. Georgette Carr, which is the owner of 48 and 50 Cooper Street. Oh, which is a 48 and 50 Cooper Street. We've had a lot of issues lately, and the thing is we're getting letters from the city, you know, saying that it needs to be demolished, and I still feel, I hear an echo. Listen.
Are you dialed in from another location? Sometimes that causes.
Yeah, I think, yeah, maybe let me turn this off. No. Keep that on there. Thank you. And then I'm gonna turn it off. I apologize.
Oh, you're fine. We're all getting used, well, still getting used to the Zoom age. Oh. We just lost her. I'll give her a minute to dial back in. Give her a few more seconds. I'm not seeing her, and if not, we'll move to the next agenda item, and then we can come back to this one.
Yeah. Lindsay is the applicant for the next item in the queue already.
See, yes.
I mean, I don't have any issue if we just go on, and then if Ms. Bostic is back,
right.
we just take her next.
All right, let's do that. We'll temporarily table agenda item number 3 and move on to agenda item number 4, 23 Ann Street. Frankie, if you would give us an introduction and overview, please.
Okay, 23 Ann Street, TMS.
I have to recuse for this, sorry.
Oh, sorry about that, Julia. Frankie, if you'll take Julia out of the meeting.
There we go.
All right.
TMS 460-1602-010, request preliminary approval for 4 murals on the west elevation of the building. This is in Mezquite, Ragsboro. The building is circa 1840, and it's the Olden Historic District. Here is an aerial showing the location of the building between John and Ann. Existing site on the other end. Looking east on Ann Street. West on Ann. Looking west on John and looking east on John. And then we have the 1902 and the 1951 Sanborn Maps showing the structures. And with that, I will turn it over to the applicant.
Mr. Sweeney, you're on mute.
This is Dan Sweeney. Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay. Do you have in your, I'm not sure how this works. I'm the architect and I did submit these plans, but the owner, my client, is here on this webinar. His name is Mitch Banchik. Do you see him in the queue?
Yes.
I think he wants to present. He presented last time in front of you as I was out of town.
Okay.
I just allowed him to speak.
Okay.
And Mr. Banchik, you're on mute.
Hi, this is Mitch
And
Banchik.
just let me know when you want to progress through the slides.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thanks. So I presented to you folks originally about 3 months ago, and the objections, there were three objections that I heard that I think I satisfied. The first one is that the murals were not Charleston enough. Called to be more creative and true to the city of Charleston, not something found when you Google coffee. Second objection was that the murals were too postcardy or like billboards. It needs to be artwork rather than signage, more unique and friendly. And the third objection was that there should be less murals. There should be 3 murals rather than 4 murals. And I believe that I answered all these objections. I hired Gil Schuler, who's a well-known graphic artist who I think did an outstanding job on the 3 murals that I'm going to present to you. He created original civic art while embracing the idea of the train depot, which was historically in the location where I'm building a restaurant. And I guess at this point you can show the murals that I'm proposing, and hopefully you like them. They all, is there a possibility, can you show them all at once and then individually? Because they're all rather cohesive. Okay, you can see it on a small scale over there. And I guess you can show the individual ones. If it's, yeah, okay. So at this point, I'm gonna turn it over to Gil Schuler to explain his creative process.
Okay, can y'all hear me?
We can, Mr. Schuler.
Okay, yeah, this is Gil Schuler. So when Mitch hired me to come up with these murals, we decided to cut it down to 3, which y'all requested, and do the long horizontal as 1, even though it's split in the middle. And then the concept that I came up with was, since it's the old train depot and the train tracks ran down the middle, was to create these vintage like train posters. If you were riding on a passenger train, you would see these at the depot that would talk about the beaches outside of Charleston and then Charleston itself, and just encourage taking a train ride and visiting the area. And so they're going to be hand painted onto these surfaces, and the 2 vertical ones are on the brick surface, and the horizontal one is like a stucco type of surface. So for sure they'll have this real vintage feel, and that's what I was trying to go for with these designs and these illustrations. I also put in like a Camden Depot, created like a pseudo Camden Depot logo, I guess you'd say, just to give it some authenticity. And so we were just trying to achieve authenticity and something interesting and fun that said Charleston and harkens back to the old days of train travel through the city.
Can you show the other 2, please, also?
Yeah, so that's the first one. This is the long horizontal, and it was hard to get them to show them on the actual, how they would look on there, but I tried to transparent them a little bit so you could see through it somewhat.
And the third one? So I think you can see how they're rather cohesive and very Charleston centric and original civic art.
Is all for the applicant presentation?
Dan, you have anything to add, or are we good?
No, that's it.
Okay, that's it.
All right, do my fellow board members have any questions for the applicant?
I have one, Lindsay, to Gil or the applicant. Would this be latex, or what type of paint would be used here?
Yeah, it would probably be, this is Gil, it would probably be latex or a long lasting one. I don't want it to be distressed, I want it to have a natural distressing to it. I don't think authenticity lends itself to creating a distressed looking poster. It's more to be authentic and then distress on its own naturally. So it'll probably be a latex paint for sure.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other board questions at this time? right, we'll move on to public comment. Allison, I see, okay, that's Gil. Allison, I don't believe we have any public comment, but please confirm.
Yes, we have no public comment for this.
All right. Frankie, if you'll give us city staff comments and recommendations, please.
Just to refresh everyone's memory, the previous motion was deferral or restudy of quantity and theme of murals. And note that the board identified more positively with the caring and sharing mural. And the previous staff comments were that the concept of murals in this building is certainly appropriate with this long expanse. The murals will not all be visible at the same time. These adaptive reuse train sheds are becoming the terminus of the low line, and it should be a lively area with engaged pedestrian traffic. However, these murals seem generic in nature and should be redesigned to incorporate some more interesting, thoughtful, or unique artistic artwork. So staff comments for the current proposal. The proposal is less generic than the previous submittal, but now it includes some extraneous text that doesn't seem to relate to any of the proposed businesses. As proposed, the design reads as a fictitious vintage sign, and this creates a false sense of history, which is inappropriate. The text along the frame should be removed on each panel. However, if the board permits the text in the frame, the incorrect spelling of smooth, which in this use should be spelled S-M-O-T-H-E. And restudy of the skyline of Charleston for accuracy. I believe that was in the third mural. Staff recommendation, the preliminary approval with staff comments noted.
Thank you, Frankie. Does the applicant want to clarify or respond to anything raised during the city staff comments?
We could certainly correct the spelling error. I would comment on the extraneous text. The extraneous text has to do with the train, and it does somewhat relate to the business in that it says coffee and refreshments. What does it say? Excuse me. It says yes, private rooms, baggage service, fresh linens, hot breakfast, coffee. It makes reference to some hospitality business. It's not. I don't feel like it's completely extraneous. We also don't want it to have to advertise the businesses at all, which is what I was instructed at the last presentation. And this is a pedestrian way that it needs to be enlivened, and we believe that these murals, as they are presented, would really be an outstanding addition to Camden Alley.
Thank you, Mr. Banchik. All right, we'll move into board discussion and a vote at this time.
Who wants to go first? Anybody?
Go ahead, Glenn. You're talking. Go ahead.
Okay. I'll keep it brief. I'm reading through staff's 3 comments. I think, I get them for the most part. I think that what we're looking at today is definitely an improvement, and I applaud that over the submittal from before. The only thing, and I'm not going to go in any order, but I agree fully with number 3. If the skyline is not accurate, that should be an easy correction to handle. And I don't know that I am struggling as much with the sort of throwback to the vintage stamp feel as staff is, I think we asked them not to necessarily reference an exact business, and I think that's what they're trying to do. I don't know that we have a full home run here, but I think this is definitely a very good improvement. And I personally trust that with some feedback, Gil could get this, to an approvable spot for them.
This is Lindsay. I'm in agreement. I think this is a great improvement, especially the what we saw at a prior meeting was very generic, and the instruction was to make this more Charleston, and I think the applicant has done that. And I agree. I think some refinement and changes that are needed, but I'm satisfied with this. I think it really is a nice improvement.
Yeah, this is Bill. Because it is artwork, obviously there's a level of subjectivity to it that we have to take for what it is, basically artwork. I guess contextually, I guess your average viewer may or may not perceive a historic context of what's going on. I usually consider this part of the rail to be more the sort of end of the light rail. I thought maybe a nod to more of the, state line, or I don't know that I guess the big line that ran at one point was the Charleston Savannah line. I don't know if it came down here. I'm not a railroad historian. So I'm just simply drawing back and looking at this as subjectively as artwork. And to that point, I do agree with some of staff's comments. Mainly because I think some of the maybe verbiage maybe could be removed. I do agree with that comment. The skyline comment, again, it's artwork. There is subjectivity to that. And it does become more of a composition of a graphic form than it does sort of a historic document of anything like that. So I guess I would say that I agree with staff's recommendation. I agree with most of the comments, except for I believe that the artistic license and accepting kind of the pretense of what this graphic is presenting, we're already sort of accepting some license from a realistic or historic viewpoint. So I guess I would say that I would ease up a little bit on comment 3. I do agree with comment number 2, and obviously, I guess I'm saying it is a bit now it is a bit more generic, a bit more subjective, which is what we were looking for. So I agree with comment 1 as well. So my only deference would be to comment number 3. That's all.
Bill Moore here. I generally agree with staff and the comments that Glenn made. This is a substantial improvement. The text around it, I think for an average visitor to Charleston, it's probably a little more confusing than anything. I don't have a lot of objection to it. I think the sort of general idea that it relates back to the railroad is interesting. I'm not sure most people are going to exactly get it, but I don't have a great deal of objection to the text around it, and it doesn't relate directly. It doesn't advertise the business in a direct way, and so I think that's appropriate. I sort of am on board with the skyline. There are skyline images of Charleston that are pretty iconic, and obviously it is art, and it's not going to be exact, but it might be a little more accurately represented. But I agree with staff's recommendation for preliminary approval.
Sounds like we've got a consensus here. Does anybody want to float a motion?
I'll go ahead and make a motion for a preliminary approval with staff comments 1 and 2.
We have a motion on the floor for preliminary approval with staff comments 1 and 2. Do I have a second? Hearing no seconds, do I have a revised motion on the floor?
Bill, can we talk that through for a second?
Sure.
With regard to, I don't know that I was expecting you to say all of number 2 in that motion.
Okay.
And my thought is perhaps streamlining the text so that it's not confusing, perhaps.
Is this a,
Streamlining it.
so is it perhaps staff comment 1 and a board comment?
Yeah, I'm in agreement with the bordering text. I guess I have an issue with that, but yeah, I guess, yeah, I see what you're saying. The first part of comment number 2, I pretty much resigned to the fact that this is subjective artwork. So yeah, you're right, Glenn, on that one. I would say it would be more the second part of comment number 2 that I do agree with. So if is the motion still alive, Lindsay, or we need to just, it never got a second. So we just go ahead, I think just make a new one.
Yes.
Okay. Glenn, you want to go ahead and do it?
Sure. And correct me if you think I get this wrong.
Okay.
I'll make a motion for preliminary approval with staff comment 1 and a board comment to either remove the perimeter text frames or simplify perimeter text frames as to not be misleading.
All right, we have a motion on the floor.
I'm sorry, Lindsay, may I say, and final review by staff. Apologize.
All right. I think that's a very important addition. All right, we have a motion on the floor for preliminary approval with staff comment 1 and a board comment to either remove the perimeter from the text frames or simplify them so as not to be misleading, and final review by staff. Is that right, Glenn?
Yes.
All right, do I have a second for Glenn's motion?
This is Bill. I'll second that motion.
Bill? All right, I'll put it to a vote. Fillmore?
Yay, in favor.
Glenn?
Yeah, in favor.
Bill?
Yeah, in favor.
The chair votes with the majority and the motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Sweeney, Mr. Banchik, and Mr. Schuler.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, let's bring Julia back in, and I thought I saw Miss Bostic back in the meeting. All right, we have Julia back. Okay, we are now moving back to agenda item number 3, and we'll go directly to the applicant presentation and let Ms. Bostic pick back up. Ms. Bostic, you are now on mute. And whenever you're ready, you can start your presentation.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
We can.
Damn it. You need to pick that up from your phone. And
Are you logged in from
Jesus.
locations?
Let's see.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, excellent. It may sound a little low. My apologies. I don't really know what's going on.
It sounds perfect.
Okay, awesome. I am here with Miss Georgette Carr, the owner of 48 and 50 Cooper Street. And the letter that you have there is a letter from our structural engineer that we chose to come out. We had gotten a letter from the fire. We had gotten a letter from the fire marshal shortly before Thanksgiving, which requested that we have the home demolition or have some things done, or we would be responsible if anything happened, in regards to being a liability to hurting others. The home was in her family since the 1950s. She is close by the Grace Ravenel Bridge, which in 2009, when they had the demolition of the Grace Bridge there, we felt like it did do some shifting, because it was actually a community effort in trying to get help with getting the homes fixed once they did all the demolition work there, which shook and structurally kind of moved the houses a little bit. Shortly after that, she had a fire, and the fire jumped from 48 to 50 Cooper Street. And it is a lot of char at the house, and a lot of things that were provided in the report from the structural engineer review that was sent, where there was also some indication of some damaged joists and beams in the bedroom. And we just believe that, she's put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into this home. And we have to be able to just allow someone to come in to keep that historic view of the home, to just come in and do that. There's nothing that we can do with that. And that's kind of what the engineer said. And she also had another contractor that said the same thing. Yeah. And so in the vicinity of that area, there's been a lot of new construction, a lot of different things happening on the adjacent streets like Lee Street and Meeting Street. And then it just kind of comes to our property, no disrespect, but it's a complete eyesore. And it's right on a very, on a corner where people are passing through, looking at all these other new houses. And we're just not having that opportunity to be able, we just want that opportunity to be able to have someone come in and that can afford to do something with the property that, that needs to be done. She has put too much hours, too much, everything she tries to do. Then now the termite was an issue that came up. So it's just a lot of things going on around that area. And if we're saying that we want to keep, that history and that preservation, I just don't feel like that gives us a good look of what we're trying to offer Charleston. We got the South Carolina State Extension building that's brand new. We got all the work that they've done with the Martin Luther King pool. We already know that there's going to be some affordable housing with the current project that's there. And there's also directly across the street where they're going to also build condos. So it just, we just kind of want to present it, and we just ask that, we're granted the demolition so that, it can kind of just, keep whoever purchases it can keep that same Charleston style, but also let's get rid of the graffiti and all the things. I mean, it's a haven for people coming in, and it is very scary to her, and that's dear to her heart. She doesn't want anyone to get hurt in that building. So we just ask that, we just ask that you grant that permission for us to allow someone that can afford a huge project like this to come in and allow it to be demoed.
Thank you, Ms. Bostic.
Yes, ma'am. Would you like for Ms. Carr to speak now?
But if you would like to,
Yes,
that
ma'am. Did you have something to say, Ms. George? There you go.
Good afternoon. Hello?
Yes, we can hear you, Ms. Carr.
Okay, good. What Ms. Bostic had to say was all true. I put years and years in trying to recondition the homes, and maybe I was just spinning my wheels. I think the most damage of it was when the bridge came down with the jackhammer, and then it just really dropped joists, and then found termite damage. And I've had contractors come in there. I've had the engineer come in, and even I have Mr. Joe Wick, who is a demolition person, and they all say in their experience they don't see where I could recondition that place. I would just ask and pray that you allow us to demolish it, because I hope I don't see where I'm getting any attractive offers from anyone that would want to buy it. And it's just, I'm afraid that it will fall. It's a lot of damage on the inside. Do you have pictures?
Yeah, he sent pictures.
Do you have pictures from the insides? The insides are falling.
We have the pictures that you sent us of the exterior.
Okay, in his report, there were pictures of the interior. Yeah, but it's and as you can see, it's coming close together, and it's all on one lot. But the insides, he did do, more detailed video saying, that the structural, the beams, and I think he wrote it in his report regarding the beams and the joists, and how charred that the roof was, the asphalt roof that they had there.
Floors are falling from upstairs to downstairs.
And the stairs, yeah.
And I see that the fire, the marshal expects me to take care of this, but I don't see where I can't do it. And I wish you would grant me demolition. I pray you grant me demolition.
Thank you, Ms. Carr.
Thank you.
Do my fellow board members have any questions for the applicant?
I'm sorry?
She's asking if the board members have any questions for you.
Okay.
Sure.
Hearing no questions at this time, we will move on to public comment. All right.
We do not have any public comment for this one.
Okay. Frankie, if you'll give us city staff comments and recommendations, please.
The pictures of inside.
Yeah, he didn't.
So staff finds that the character defining features are in salvageable conditions. The original wood siding is visible on the side elevation of 50 Cooper underneath the vinyl siding, which has encased the original fabric. The original wood siding is visible on the rear elevation of 48 Cooper. However, much of the original building form has been altered or removed. For 48 Cooper, Google imagery shows that in addition to the property and overall renovations were completed around 2015. However, we have not found the city records of this work. We recommend completing necessary repairs and weatherization of the building. This would include repairing the roof, installing missing or broken windows, removing vegetation and plywood on the facade, and any necessary repairs to shield the building from the elements. In a rehabilitation scenario, A proper preservation plan should be submitted to BAR or BAR staff for approval. And the plan should include an engineering report that goes further to determine what historic fabric is viable. Staff recommendation is denial for demolition with staff comments noted.
Ms. Bostic and Ms. Carr, before we move into board discussion and we make a final decision, did you all want to respond or clarify anything raised in the city staff comments and recommendations? Again, a decision hasn't been made yet. This is just an opportunity for you to respond to anything that Frankie just raised in the staff comments.
Okay, yes, ma'am. I just wanted to make it clear that we've had actual professionals come in and told us like there's nothing structural that we can do to salvage this, these buildings. I guess my question would be, what would be the point of even trying to salvage a building like this? Because we've even had, I think it was 2010, when there was a letter sent stating that they wanted to demo the property. So, and then now we're trying to do what you guys requested that we did that long time ago. And then now it's like, we don't have the opportunity to demo that, because in the inside of there, I would just ask I don't know if y'all do extensions or how you do this. This is my first time, coming to the board. But if we can set up a way that you guys can see the inside, or I can send the file from the structural engineer to someone real quick, so that you can see that. I'd like that opportunity to be able to do that, because I just feel like it's a lot of back and forth. And it's like, like I said, the city came, with an offer years ago also. And then it was also the city saying that you needed to get this demoed. And they said that she had a certain period of time and you guys would demo it and then pay her or charge her or something like that. So, we just ask that we look at it from all angles and from every, platform, because if you're expecting her, almost 70 years old to be able to pay for, all of this stuff, and then, we don't even know what we can build there, or, if someone wants to purchase it, because she just can't financially and physically be able to do that. I just want to kind of get a better understanding of what we got going on, because it's like all these other areas are being built. The house next to her has been granted to be built, and hers was in better condition than those two properties. Also, the other ones that are around the corner have gotten and didn't look half as bad as those properties, and were granted permissions to be able to build there, and they're there, and I know that for a fact. So I just want her to just get I'd like a better understanding from what you're looking at, as far as just trying to clean up a roof, when this guy is clearly saying that there's a joint, problem with the joint. I mean, if there's something wrong with the foundation, you can't just fix windows and fix, a roof and think that it's going to make it better. That it needs to either be allowed to, I feel is that either you allow us to tear it down and build what's there, or allow someone to tear that down so we can make it a better look. I can't imagine, that we want that to be a representation of how Charleston is. One street off of East Bay, one of the busiest streets, and also Meeting Street. So I guess in my opinion, if she's telling you she can't financially do this and bear, the rest of this stuff physically, then what other options do we have?
And I'd like to say that when I was told that I needed to tear it down or they would tear it down, put a lien on the property, their reasoning was a public eyesore and uneconomically sound. And right now it's even worse with the cost of materials and lumber. I can't reach it. I cannot reach it. I don't I'm just trying, not trying to pawn it off on to be your problem. It is my problem and I can't solve it. I've been spinning my wheels for years over there. And I plead with you to let me be able to demolish it and, you know, be able to do something better. There's nothing I can do with that. Do you have pictures for inside? Because the engineer did take pictures inside. Were they visible? Could you tell? Could you see them? I mean, the wood is charred down to almost nothing.
Probably a question for staff. I know we received the engineer's report, and I'm looking at some interior photos. Did we receive everything?
So why is that not presented?
Oh, we
asking did they receive everything.
We attached everything we received.
You did? Okay.
So-
Let me
so-
go back in and make sure I didn't make a mistake. Hold on.
That's one thing. Go ahead, Glenn.
Madam Chair, may I kind of have a question? Can we, while you look for this information, can we clarify? I was not with the group this morning, but I did look at the buildings in person about 20 minutes before the rest of the group was there.
Oh, okay.
Can we clarify the believed age of each of the two buildings, please?
It's in the 1800s. But on like some of the records, I saw different dates. But because I think the buildings adjacent were in the 1900s. And then those two buildings right there was like 1860, maybe 1866, something like that. It was in that time frame.
And within the past 20 years, it has suffered like 2 fires. I think fire even before that.
Hurricanes, earthquakes.
The bridge coming down. I lived there through that, and if you were there, they check you out of your bed. They were jackhammering the pilings that the bridge sat on. They did dynamite, and I could get no satisfaction or help from the city. We basically pleaded then, and it's not anything I could
in fact
repair.
Sorry to interrupt you, Ms. Carr. In fact, it was proposed when Riley was in office, they wanted to build a parking lot there. They had contacted the other family member that has property in this vicinity. And they told her, you know, we're thinking about doing this as a parking lot. How would you feel about that? So I guess that's kind of where my questioning is coming from as far as the preservation part of it. Because I wouldn't, and this was when it was in way better condition.
Not this last fire.
Not the last, yeah. Well, the first fire.
The first fire was started from the house that was next door.
Mm-hmm.
And it didn't burn to the ground.
No, it didn't do much.
It didn't burn to the ground, but they tore it down.
Yes, they did.
And put a new house there. And I would just like the same opportunity.
Yeah.
Even if
because even down the street where Sweetgrass is, Sweetgrass Capital, where they rebuilt that in that area, all of that area going down towards Meeting Street, they're building all these things. And I'm just trying to get the visualization of all these lofts and all these, great things like the cigar factory around the corner and all these things. We just don't want to sit in there doing that. And it's just, it's sentimental to her, as far as family, she want to make sure she's getting rid of this and doing the right thing by, what her daddy was basically a historian somewhat in Charleston. So, it's not about us wanting to just tear it down and just remove any history. She's afraid for people getting hurt. People are in there now that it's gotten cold. I went down there a couple of times, people are in the house, and that's why we kind of had the gate locked this morning, because we had a couple of people there last week, and I just don't want anything there to happen to them. We have, tenants in the next building. So we don't want that to keep drawing that type of, energy in that area where someone could get hurt or anything like that. And then I think with the tattoo, not the tattoo, what do you call it? Like the murals they're building, they, torn down signs, tore down her fence, so she's just over it mentally. She's ready to retire. She's a great citizen. She works for the port for years. Yeah. So that, we just want to get rid of it. They know everything about you.
Madam Chair, maybe we should move on to board discussion and see where we lead.
Okay.
I think so at this time. So at this time, applicant presentation is closed and we're going to move into a period of board discussion and eventual vote.
Okay.
I'll open it up now to the board.
I'll just go ahead and make a couple of comments. Number one, I would say that if the board were to feel like we need additional information based on what the applicant has been mentioning about the interior, I think we could always defer and schedule a time to go inside to look at the structure of the buildings if we needed to, if we need more information.
Okay.
But I'd like to know what everybody else thinks.
Yeah, I maybe have a little bit of departure from staff's stance on this. I mean, the Sanborn Maps clearly show that these were 2 one-story buildings when they were constructed. It's on the 1902 Sanborn Maps, and up until at least 51, they're still shown as 2 one-story buildings. And in 1951, it looks like they were separate, like they weren't even connected at that point. So based on what I saw this morning and just the bit of history that I'm gathering, I do not see what is worth preserving here. I just can't visually make it out based on what the existing conditions are. So in my mind, as opposed to the previous demo application this evening, I think that the historic integrity, the historic fabric has been so radically altered and compromised that I just feel like there's not a great case to be made to hold on to these. I mean, also factoring in the fact that it's got to be elevated, maybe 7 feet, something like that. I just don't see it on this one. The record card, which Frankie provided, was really interesting to see the little 1-story cottage that had been there on the east side, but it is not there now. It is so radically altered. If there's any fragment of it there, I'd be surprised.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Julia, I would echo a similar sentiment in that I think the applicants are aware that we as a board do not take demolition lightly, and it is not all that often that we like to go down the road of demolition. I have struggled in my own walking around and looking at these to find a whole lot of redeemable architectural fabric and character that I think is important to the neighborhood, as opposed to what they may have heard us discuss about the other application earlier tonight, where you had so much accurate historic architectural fabric intact, even though it required a lot of work to restore it. The entire recipe was right there in front of you. And here on Cooper Street, I'm struggling to find that. And so I don't have the strong opposition to the demolition that I had on the other application, unless there is something that I did not see as a result of not being with the group this morning.
One more here, Glenn. I think you probably saw what we saw, because we certainly didn't go inside. And to echo what's been said prior, there may actually be, slightly more historic material on the interior of this building. It'd be impossible to tell, of course, because we couldn't go inside than there was on the previous application. But one of the important things, obviously, about that was form and the existing form and the existing detailing. And to Julia's point, the one thing that struck me about this structure this morning is that the form, I think, is not significant. And so if we were trying to preserve form here, I think we're trying to preserve something that certainly is not original and probably not terribly contributing. And I say that reluctant to tear down any historic structure, particularly in this district where there's such limited purview over what goes back on a site. But it's difficult to justify this particularly from a perspective of form.
This is Lindsay, and I'm in agreement with my fellow board members. Just to echo what Fillmore has said, I think with the earlier application, I really was looking at a form that, while dilapidated and old, was still there and was still significant. It showed the architectural history of that street, what had been there and what we are losing if we approve demolition. And here, it did seem like, especially, Julia, I agree with you, looking at the Sanborn maps and seeing that picture, I am really not seeing any of the original form, which leads me to think that this is really not, we're not really preserving an architectural form, because there's really not much, if any, of it left. So I would be in favor of demolition.
All right.
Thank you.
So, yeah, I think that is all kind of lining up. And I'll just mention that I'm sure that originally, when they were one-story buildings, I think the one on the east was the corner store, and the little cottage that you see in that record card is
Yes, ma'am.
adorable. But those are so long gone. So I'm going to make a motion for approval of demolition. Final approval of demolition.
We have a motion on the floor for approval of demolition. Do I have a second?
Second, Glenn.
Thank you, Glenn. All right, I will put it to a vote. Bill?
Yeah, in favor.
Fillmore?
Yay, in favor.
Julia?
Yay, in favor.
Glenn?
Yeah, in favor.
The chair votes with the majority, and the motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Ms. Carr and Ms. Bostic. All right, moving on to agenda item number 5, 61 Reed Street has been withdrawn by the applicant. We are on agenda item number 6, 32 Ann Street. Frankie, if you would provide us with an introduction and overview, please.
Yes, ma'am. 32 Ann Street, TMS number 460-1202-106 is requesting a new lighted sign to replace the existing in Ragsboro, circa 1848, in the Oldham Historic District. Here is an aerial showing the location of the structure. Here is the existing site. View of the other end of the site from the Mary Street side. Looking east on Ann and looking west on Ann. And then the 1888 and 1955 Sanborn maps showing the structure. And I will turn it over to the applicant.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Ms. Powers.
Thank you. I'm Whitney Powers of Studio A. I believe Gil Schuler may be available.
Yep, I'm here.
And so this is a view from just off of King Street looking toward the current Music Farm site or signage. Next slide, please. And there you can see the sign as it is currently on the Ann Street elevation. Next slide. The plan here, because this particular sign is in very poor condition, and there is an interest in kind of giving this sign. Gil, you might want to pipe in and say graphically what your charge was, and then we can speak to the other aspects of the sign.
Okay, well, we did a new logo for the Music Farm. So we wanted to replace the old one with the new one, but we like the footprint of this sign. And so we're not changing the size of it. We're just changing the art basically. And we're changing the method of fabrication, which is, it will be multi-leveled, but it'll also have a neon aspect to it. With the neon aspect, and I would probably need Greg Pavone of Limelight Sign to talk about that in detail, but we're looking at what they call a pseudo neon, which it looks amazing and it looks like neon, but we don't have the problems of neon, of it going out and breaking or somebody breaking it, being true glass. But
and it's LED.
Yeah, it's an LED. Whitney, do you have a slide of that?
I just have the images that you provided of kind of what it would look like, but there's the sign,
so,
what you would see at night.
So that's what we're talking about. So the actual, I'm going to call them lightning bolts, but and the rose window art, as well as the two words Music Farm, they are outlined in this LED raised neon, as well as the border. And then when it's off, if you go to that slide before that, Whitney, when it's during the day,
Frankie, there we go. There.
Right there. So it has details in the sign of the lattice work and stuff around the building itself, which would actually be raised on there too. So everything's going to have dimension. And so this is kind of during the day, and then the one that Whitney showed at night. And there's precedent for neon or a lit sign. And we just feel like the venue deserves this.
Yeah, if you look at the next slide, Frankie, please, or the next one, sir. Well, there you can see the beyond this property, beyond the Music Farm building at 32 Ann is a club that actually has a kind of a blue lighted sign for this club deco. And I think what we're proposing is perhaps more appropriate than that. And then actually closer to King Street is the actual neon signage for Basil Restaurant, which I suspect that some aspect of that is going to survive into the future with the bicycle and the Dudley's bar has neon as well. And so along this stretch of Ann Street, you would have four signage elements that in fact have an affinity one to the next, which I think is appropriate and has a more durability. And I mean, I'm sure it's interesting how many people have said, oh, the Music Farm is coming back, and lots of excitement. And I think one of the things is to basically kind of revamp its image to be this next generation or iteration of what the farm has been to all of us. I mean, in my lifetime, and Gil, you've done this as well, I'm sure, in 1993 when they first did it, and I walked in there and there was nothing but sand. It's a far different animal, but there's an awful lot of warm and fuzzy feelings about this, especially because we're kind of getting rid of some of the nasties. But but anyway, I'm not sure that there's another image. Frankie, is there any more imagery? I think, is this the last one of our slides? Yeah. Okay, thanks.
Yeah. All right, thank you, Ms. Powers and Mr. Schuler. Do my fellow board members have any questions for the applicant?
I have a quick one. Whitney, maybe I missed it, but is the address lit as well, like the 32 Ann?
It
Yes, it
is.
is.
And I think we may, it has to be, I mean, the fire marshal, it's supposed to be 4 inches tall. So, and the sign is what, 4 by 6 or 4 by 5? Gil, help me here. I mean, it's basically the same size as what's there. It's the same size as what's there. And so that address, from a fire department standpoint, would be that 4 inches.
If it
Yeah,
weren't,
so we might need to adjust that to make it correct for regulations. And but I like having the address there. I would like to hear y'all's comments for sure.
I was just curious if it, I mean, obviously the fire department doesn't require it to be, pseudo neon, but would it still be visible in the daytime if it weren't?
Yeah, actually that 32 Ann would not be, it would be, it's like backlit LED. So it's cut into the sign.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have one question. Do the sort of pan, kind of industrial pan lights up above, would those be proposed to go away because of the fact that this sign would be illuminated?
Yes.
Yes, they'd be removed.
And then I guess sorry, I guess I had 2 questions. I mean, what I'm looking at here on the screen is pretty much a white. Is that the scheme, or are there colors involved?
Gil?
The sign itself right now, as proposed, if you could go to that previous, the previous slide.
There you go.
Shoot, I lost it. So right now, those are the colors that I totally lost everybody, but that's okay. Can y'all hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, yeah. So that's the color scheme that we've gone with the music farm sign. And when we do the proposed white neon like that, or pseudo neon LEDs, they would actually have kind of a greenish glow to them.
Because of the green of the sign.
Yeah.
Any other board questions at this time?
Do you have like a cut sheet or anything of these fixtures, or any photographic examples of these LED fixtures?
We can definitely get them for you. Greg Pavone has them. I don't have any with me at this point.
What do you have? I mean, I will say the one thing that he did mention was that, in fact, all of the white ribbing, the outline of the letters and the outline of the sign projects 3/8 inch beyond the face of the sign. So you have a profile that's it's certainly not the floating bar of light that you would have on a neon sign, but you do have it adding dimension to the sign. So, and that is, he called it push through. So the LEDs are pushed through the back, the base of the sign in order to make
it's like half round. It's rounded like neon tubing, but it's like half of it sitting on the surface, pushed through the sign. And if y'all require that we send you an example, I'm sure we can do that.
Any other board questions? Bill, do you have anything else? All right. We'll move on to public comment at this time. I don't believe we have any public comments. Allison, is that right?
You're correct.
Okay. If you'll give us city staff comments and recommendations, please, Frankie.
BAR policy does not support neon and generally has not supported faux neon. While we don't oppose the use of lighting at this location and for this business, we just don't think the use of faux neon is appropriate. Staff recommendation is denial with staff comments noted.
Thank you, Frankie. Ms. Powers and Mr. Schuler, did you want to respond to or clarify anything raised in the staff comments?
Well, we can totally do real neon. I mean, what we were trying to avoid with authentic neon is just the maintenance that is incurred with the neon. And, you know, when letters are out and you can't get them repaired quickly. And the new process that we're talking about, you can't hardly tell it's not neon unless you get on a ladder and look at it. So, you know, but like I said, we can always go back to real neon. We just feel like this would be more consistent and fresher.
I think more than that too is in this location. There's very much a concern of maintenance of keeping it operational, and secondly that neon is incredibly lacking in energy efficiency. And the reason why there has been even this evolution is not to be faux, but it was to in fact come up with something that provided a energy efficient, an energy efficient version of this kind of lighting, of a three-dimensional lighting. And so we're not trying to mimic neon as much as we are to sort of provide, well, I mean, I guess you could say mimic, but neon is so intensive in terms of its energy use that that's actually where this entire technology came from, was a way to do a neon look without the downsides that were related to energy inefficiencies and durability. And that's certainly something that we're interested in, putting something on the building that actually is kind of representative of the durability that the building has.
Thank you, Ms. Powers. All right, I will open it up for board discussion and a vote at this time.
Well, this is Bill. I'm going to go ahead and jump in real quick. I see staff's comment and recommendation. I guess one thing I would like to do is I don't want to dismiss this application necessarily simply because I don't have a full grasp of what it is. I would rather see maybe a cut sheet and some photographic examples of this before I rule it out. I know recently we approved a couple of signs with neon, Lenore, and what's the Handy Hot Hand, whatever, down on Wentworth. So I don't necessarily want to discount the possibility of doing this. I just would like to see more information, because either denying it or approving it, I wouldn't quite know what I was denying or approving. Would rather see a technical cut sheet and maybe some better photographic examples of literal installations of this product. So It's just where I am right now.
I tend to agree with you, Bill. I think generally the proposal seems appropriate for that location. I mean, they point out that they're surrounded by other businesses with neon signs, and there's the nearest residence is far from this location. It's clearly a commercial district with a lot of nightlife happening. But it'd be really helpful, and I'd just love to see like a shop drawing, or like Bill says, just some more details, examples of what the three-dimensional implications of what you're talking about might be. But I think the graphic design is really nice, and again, I think the concept is probably appropriate myself.
I agree on that with regard to, I think the design of it is all positive. I just don't really have much knowledge of the faux simulated neon. I think it must be what the pink neon stuff inside Neon Tiger is, if anybody has been to eat there. Because I actually I stared at the walls trying to figure out if it was neon or plastic, and I went and touched it and it was plastic. But I think we just have to be careful that it feels correct, as opposed to feeling temporary or lesser in quality. And I'm not insinuating that. I just don't have the knowledge or the history to know it. I'll also kind of say that those neon signs that we approved over on that Society Hazel, or Wentworth, I think, for the Handy and Hot and Lenore, one of the two of them is really bright. And so I think we just have to be careful not to overwhelm the streetscape with an illuminated sign. I'm not opposed to an illuminated sign. I think we just have to be really careful.
Yeah, I would almost be willing to, and I will let Lindsay, you and Phil more chime in if you do, but I'd be willing to say what I think might be appropriate would be a deferral to give the applicant a chance to present more information, be that technical information, cut sheets. I'd like to see cut sheets, and I'd like to see real photographic examples of this type of fixture, just to make, give it the fullest consideration. So that's just where I am, but yeah, I'm sorry, you guys, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I don't disagree at all, Bill. I was just going to say I agree with everything that had been said.
I'm in agreement with that as well. And if anywhere, I actually think this might be an appropriate location for a little bit of light, given what's on either side of it. But I agree. I'd like to see some sort of example. So I'd be in favor of a deferral.
And maybe if it could even be like a proper shop drawing, just so we really understand the dimensions and the conditions.
Yeah, I agree with that, Julia, wholeheartedly. Yeah, and hopefully, the applicant can see the value in that, because it is a new type of fixture for us. We are having to make a consideration here, and I definitely don't want to deny it just on a premise, and I can't really approve it on a premise. So I'll make a motion for deferral pending opportunity for the applicant to bring more technical information for consideration.
Bill, may I ask a question of the applicant? I'm sorry. Is it by any means possible for them to bring a sample to the site for board members to see?
I will have to ask, this is Gil, I'll have to talk to Greg Pavone and see if he can get a sample. We can definitely do shop drawings. And if it would be great if we could do this all at staff level, go ahead and defer and then show you guys the stuff and then get it approved at staff. But yeah, making shop drawings, I don't think that's gonna be a problem. Getting a sample, I can't answer that right now, but I think that's possible.
Bill, does your motion still stand?
Bill, may I ask? Sorry, I'm gonna make this messy. Can I interject into your motion, Bill? I wonder, does it help if you were to consider adding to your motion approval of the graphic design element, with the deferral being the mechanics of the illumination, or do we just want to defer it in general?
I would think we just defer wholesale, because they're sort of one and the other. They're sort of part and parcel of each other. So And it is giving the applicant an opportunity to present more information. So yeah, and I would like to keep it at board level because there is some degree of precedent to this that I would like to, have further knowledge of. We may see more of these if it's successful. So I really would like to see it at this level as well.
All right, we have a motion on the floor for deferral pending an opportunity for the applicant to bring more technical information for review. Bill, is that accurate? All right, do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Julia. All right, we'll put the motion to a vote. Fillmore,
Yay in favor.
Glenn,
In favor.
Bill,
Yeah, in favor.
Julia.
Yay in favor.
The chair votes with the majority and the motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Ms. Powers and Mr. Schuler.
Thank you. Can I have a question? The size is actually governed by using the existing brackets and things. And I do know that that's a bit larger than sort of what the provisions within the governing things would generally allow for. And I guess one question would be whether any of that is could be appropriate to consider that this is going to continue with the same size.
Is that a zoning question? I guess, Frankie, I'm kind of asking that, or maybe Tori.
It is a zoning question. If the size was previously approved by zoning, they could stay with the same size. But if it's larger than the BZA would have to approve a larger size.
Okay, so it's the same size as what's there. So thanks. It was just a question.
Thank you, Ms. Powers. Excuse me. All
Thank
right. We're on agenda item number 7, and Julia, you're recused from this one. So Frankie, if you would dismiss Julia.
Thanks.
Virtual. All right, agenda item number 7 is 162 Queen Street. Frankie, if you'll give us an introduction and overview, please.
I think I'm going to do the intro for this one.
All right.
All right, so we have 162 Queen Street, TMS number 457-0803-024, requesting new garden shed and expansion / renovation of rear addition. It's a category 2 in Charleston Village, circa 1852 in the Old and Historic District. See if it'll let me. No, sorry, skipped ahead. Here's some context photos for where we are. Existing site photo. And some context photos of the street. Sanborn Maps, 1888, showing the dwelling and a kitchen house in 1951. Sanborn. And we have the applicant's presentation.
Good evening, board members. This is Erin Lanier with Julia Martin Architects here tonight on behalf of the owners of 162 Queen Street, Pamela and Gary Rooney. To give a little context to our request, the primary scope of this renovation is to rework the existing kitchen and master bath and to provide a means of circulation to the second floor of the kitchen house, which is currently only accessible by walking through the master bathroom. We will leave the existing historic exterior largely as is, but we are requesting conceptual approval to vertically extend an existing rear addition, which will contain a stair, some pantry space, and a small bathroom. This reworked addition will take the place of the existing outdoor storage shed, so we're also requesting to build a new garden shed, which we think will anchor the view from the street towards the rear of their garden. Next slide, please. These are some photos of the existing conditions, including the garden shed they have behind the kitchen house now. There in the bottom left to be replaced by our 2-story addition. The west elevation of our addition will step back about 18 inches from the face of the kitchen house, so we feel like it will really be minimally visible from the street. Next slide. These are just some context photos. The adjacent neighbors to the north and west are non-historic 2-story townhomes, and the neighbor to the east is a home very similar to 162, which was purchased by friends of the Rooneys recently. I also mentioned this project just went to the Board of Zoning Appeals for a setback variance. And there was no opposition from any of the adjacent neighbors or anyone else. Next slide. These are the Sanborn maps and a little bit of history on the property. As you can see, in 1888, there was a 1-story addition at the rear of the kitchen house with a footprint similar to what we're proposing today. That addition was removed and ultimately replaced by the wood frame shed that is there now. The only fabric that appears older and will remain is a brick wall, which serves as a party wall between the current shed and a shed that directly abuts on the neighbor's side to the east. I'll also just point out that there is an outbuilding that appears in 1944, which is no longer there, but is in a similar location to where we're proposing the new garden shed. Next slide. This is our existing and proposed site plan with the new shed and expanded addition there at the top of the page on your right. Next slide. These are existing and proposed first floor plans, which again mostly focus on the interior renovations to the kitchen and butler's pantry. At the addition, we've tried to stay as small as possible in deference to the historic mass and the neighbor to the north, just managing to squeeze a stair up to the 2nd floor with a pantry below. Next slide. Here at the 2nd floor, we've just again tucked in a small bathroom to serve what they would like to use as a guest room or an office. Next slide. This is our existing and proposed front and rear elevations. We aren't making any changes to the main house, but you can see the new shed and the 2-story addition tucked behind the kitchen house, both of which will be clad with the boral nickel gap to differentiate from historic structures. Next slide. Here are our existing and proposed west elevations. And as you'll see in the 3D views, we're envisioning the addition in a dark color scheme to allow it to recede. We're keeping the design really simple with a scale and fenestration that relates to but doesn't exactly replicate the kitchen house. I'll also note one small improvement to the main house that's mentioned here. We're requesting to replace those doors that appear sort of in the hyphen space, which were altered at one time to add glazing, allowing light into those interior spaces, and they're just in bad shape. So we'll replace them with new doors to match 4 panels with glazing in the top 2. Next slide. Here at the east elevation, the 2nd floor pops up above the existing masonry wall. We think this view, like the west, will be minimally, if at all, visible and respectfully distinguishes the new from the old. Next. These are some enlarged elevations of the new garden shed, which will be in the far left corner of the property. Again, we're proposing boral nickel gap siding, a standing seam roof, and louvered wood doors. Next slide. I'll just end with some existing and proposed 3D views, which we feel show this addition will be minimally visible from the street and is respectfully subordinate and differentiated from the historic structures. The garden shed will be visible, but we think it too is complementary to the property and will actually provide some visual interest to the garden and break up the expanse of the brick wall of the townhouse to the north. That is all I have, but if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Erin. Do my fellow board members have any questions for the applicant?
Fillmore, I have one quick question, Erin, on A201. If we can, I'm not sure about the, I mean, it looks as though the new addition has a relatively flat roof or a very shallow parapet or something. I couldn't get it from there, but look, is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
The addition to which it is attached, it looks like there's a corbel on the at the eave on the gable. Is that, it's a little hard to tell from the drawings, but is there a corbel there? And does that addition, does it impede on that corbel?
We would not have it impede on the corbel. It would drop down below that. That is the intent.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Any other board questions for the applicant at this time? All right, we'll move on to public comment. Let's see. I don't think that we have any public comment.
No, I don't think we do.
Okay. All right. Allison, will you or Frankie be giving us city staff comments and recommendations?
I think Frankie's taking back over. She had to step out for a second, but she's back.
Okay, for staff comments, while we appreciate that the addition is clearly delineated as subordinate to the original house and the step down height, we feel that a gable roof would better relate to the original house, which has 3 existing sections of gable roofs. Regarding the shed, staff appreciates the shutters with hardware, the brick steps which relate to the house, and the standing seam gable roof. And we would ask to clarify the proposed color for the addition and the garden shed, as the rendering depicts a black or Charleston green, and which is typically not used as the primary color for a structure. Staff recommendation of conceptual approval with final review by staff.
Thank you, Frankie. Erin, did you have any response, or did you want to clarify anything raised in the staff comments?
Sure. I appreciate staff's comments. I'll just point out that this addition is going to be so minimally visible. I'm not sure you'd really be able to appreciate the difference between a gable roof and what we're showing here. We prefer the low slope in this instance because it feels more subordinate and gives us a good location to mount and hide the mini split unit that will serve the addition, in addition to keeping rainwater on our property rather than having to manage it from the neighbor's side. And we are thinking sort of a darker color for the addition, which is something we've done, and there are various other examples of around town. I don't have the exact color, but we would certainly share that with staff as we get to that point. Thank you.
Thank you, Erin. All right, I'll open it up for board discussion and vote at this time.
This is Bill. I'll go ahead and jump in. I think it's actually a well considered addition, especially in light of sort of Fillmore's question about engaging the portable of the kitchen house. I actually think this roof line will be less invasive to the fabric, and I definitely appreciate the point about water management. So I believe I do agree with staff's recommendation of conceptual approval and even final review by staff. I believe I have a little bit of deference to comment number 1. And I'm okay with the idea of potentially a darker color scheme. I'm sure that could be submitted and approved at staff level. So I'd be in support of staff's recommendations with the exclusion of comment number 1, and 2 is a compliment, and 3 I believe could be handled at staff level. So that's where I am. Thank you.
Fillmore here. Yeah, Bill, I agree. I think if you cable that roof, it's going to get all over the historic roof, the details on the historic roof, and so I think it actually works better as a flat roof. So other than that, I agree with staff.
I think after the discussion, the roof definitely seems to make sense based on what Erin was able to add. Regarding the color, I'm okay if that gets handled at staff. I'm kind of seeing. Could we pop back to isn't there a painted stucco or painted masonry wall currently? I'm just trying to think of what helps that just sort of recede and go away. So that's sort of a dark green that wall back there is already painted.
I'm not sure exactly.
Which slide are you looking for, Glenn?
The one with the banana tree.
The top right. I'm just sort of, not that can't be changed as well, but I'm just sort of thinking what doesn't make the new shed jump out at you. I don't have opposition to a darker color. I'd say that should be discussed maybe between staff and the applicant to clarify.
I agree. I'd be willing to float a motion if y'all are ready. Can you, Frankie, can you pop up the comments back up real quick? Or Allison, I'm sorry if you're driving it. I'll go ahead and float a motion for conceptual approval with final review by staff with staff comments with staff's comment too, which is a complimentary comment. And that I believe that staff could handle that final color approval as well.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor for conceptual approval with final review by staff with staff comment 2. Is that right, Bill?
Yes.
Do I have a second for Bill's motion?
Second, Glenn.
All right, I'll put it to a vote. Fillmore,
Yay in favor.
Bill,
Yeah, in favor.
Glenn,
Yay in favor.
chair votes with a majority and the motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Erin.
Thank you.
All right, let's bring Julia back in. Okay, we are now on to agenda item number 8, 9 George Street. Frankie, please provide an introduction and overview.
9 George Street, TMS 458-0103-004. I request conceptual review of alteration to rear 2000s edition of historic house. And this is in Ansonboro. It's a category 3, circa 1813 in the old and historic district. And here is an aerial showing the location. Some existing site photos. Context photos of George Street. In the 1880 and 1955 Sanborn. And if the applicant would like to take it. Yeah.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Hi, I'm Julie Keys with Steel Marsh Architecture. And to give you the background on this project, the owners have enjoyed their home and are now becoming full-time residents and would like to add some function to the rear addition of their house, particularly by increasing the kitchen and having a deeper back porch and adding a laundry room on the second floor. So this is the rendering of the proposed design, but go to the next slide. Again, I have some context photos as well. And there's limited visibility from George Street, but there is some, and I think your context photos kind of show they're further down the street. You can see a little bit more even in this particular photo. Next. The Sanborn Maps here, you can see the original structure had the piazza wrap around the corner in the back, and at some point that was filled in. Next. The survey, you can go to the next slide with the proposed site plan. Just showing the extent of the addition is to the modern addition only. We won't be impacting the original structure on the exterior at all. Next. In the plans, you can see the owners wanted to have some a deeper piazza. So we're requesting to have a deeper piazza, but still not deeper than the original structure piazza depth. And then the heated addition is expanding the kitchen. Next. And on the second floor above the heated footprint of the new kitchen, we're adding a laundry room to the space. Next. And the new roofs would be shed roofs that would match the existing metal roof. Next. So conceptually, the addition that was done in early 2000s sort of treated the piazza infill that I mentioned earlier as the hyphen between the historic structure and the 2000s addition. And we felt that that addition was successful in being subordinate and differentiating to the historic structure. So we wanted to respect that and keep some of those same characteristics, such as smaller windows, simpler detailing. We worked with the Historic Charleston Foundation on kind of several iterations, and we felt that this simple shed roof with siding that is wider than the adjacent red siding and simpler windows, as I mentioned, was still receded from the original structure. It's set back in depth and height, and for that reason, we again just feel that this acts as continuing to be subordinate and set back from the original structure, which was the goal. Next. That's the rear elevation. We are also requesting screens on the proposed new screen porch. And the existing piazza has railings, but we're not proposing railings for the new screen porch, and because it's low enough for code requirements, and we felt that again that was sort of keeping with the simpler, more subordinate nature of the architecture there. Next. This rendering is pretty accurate from George Street. I think there's actually more foliage that would be hiding the view of the addition. You can see that it's set back the roof line, and the wall depth is, I think, about 8 inches set back from the existing original structure. Next. And again, that's just the final rendering the view from the pool, which they want to be enjoying now that they're full-time residents and have the seating space in the back of the house. So that's the end of my presentation. You can let me know if you have any comments.
Thank you, Julie. Do my fellow board members have any questions for the applicant? All right, we will move on to public comment.
I believe we have April Wood from Historic Charleston Foundation signed up.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
April Wood, Historic Charleston Foundation. As Julie mentioned, HCF has an easement on the property at 9 George Street. And we've met with the applicant a few times to review the request for an alteration to the non-historic addition to the house at 9 George Street. That addition was actually constructed in 2009, the white portion of the building. We are in support of this application for the following reasons. The proposed alteration is subordinate to the existing hyphen portion of the house, which according to our records was enclosed in 1969. The existing hyphen was originally part of a wraparound piazza. The proposed addition does not impact historic material. And the addition is minimally visible from the public right-of-way. HCF has approved this change to its easement property, and we respectfully recommend approval at the BAR. Thank you.
Thank you, April. And Allison, I believe that's it for public comment.
Yes.
All right, Frankie, if you'll give us city staff comments and recommendations, please.
The proposed addition, we feel needs to be further delineated from and subordinate to the historic home by recessing the addition slightly more than the proposed depth. The addition was subordinate in nature, and the proposal diminishes the level of subordination. We recommend to restudy options for the pitch of the roof on the proposed addition. The rendering on page A3D-1 depicts a more steeply pitched roof than is evident on the roof plan and the elevations. And we recommend maintaining the balustrade on the rear portion of the non-historic porch in order to relate to the original house. Staff recommends conceptual approval with staff comments noted and final review by staff.
Thank you, Frankie. Ms. Keys, did you want to respond or clarify anything raised in the public comment or the city staff comments and recommendations?
Yes, thanks. In regards to, well, first, for number 2, the pitch of the roof, the proposed addition, we have that at a 2 and 12, and that, oh, I'm sorry, it is actually 1 and 12. It could possibly be increased to 2 and 12. It is consistent on A3D1. So it's just possibly the angle that made it look more steep there. And we can certainly look at maintaining the balustrade on the rear portion. As far as the delineation, and from staff comment number 1, we're happy to look at, getting the magic depth there. I did study various depths or setbacks from the existing piazza. Right now it's actually 9 inches, so I mean, I would like comments for what we think is appropriate. I mean, certainly we could go up to a foot. Or more. I'm trying to maintain the function of the interior space without having too much of a jog on the inside. But yes, that's all I have.
Thank you, Ms. Keys. All right, so we'll move into board discussion and a vote at this time.
Real quick, could y'all pull up the elevations again? I'm sorry.
Is that the one you wanted to?
Yeah, how about that rear elevation again? I'm sorry. Just wanted to see the wall plane. Yeah, there we go. Thank you. Okay. Okay. Great. Thanks. I just wanted to see that real quick. And I'm thinking somebody else can go ahead. Just want to see that thing.
Thank you. Could you go to one of the renderings again? Maybe that, I don't know, one of the renderings at the end. Maybe the next one. Yeah, I'm a little torn on this. I don't really know exactly what to say yet. I'll listen to other board members, but despite the fact that that addition was built relatively recently, it really does seem like it was thoughtfully designed. It had, that balance and symmetry and good proportion. And I can imagine that was kind of a selling point when it was originally proposed. And this alteration to it really just dramatically affects that, and not in a great way. I do understand what the homeowners and the designers are trying to achieve at the interior. I do. I'm just struggling a little bit with with the change to that really simple form that was constructed well in the last 20 years. I would have no problem with the porch getting deeper and being screened and having rails or not having rails. I'm just struggling a little bit, so I'm curious to see what other people think.
Fillmore here. I have a quick question for the applicant. On the roof plan, the roof of the new addition is called out as a 1 in 12 and metal roof. Is that going to be is that intended to be standing seam?
With 1 in 12, that would probably have to be a flat lock. That is an important point there. It would have to be flat lock there.
Okay, thank you. It looked like it was drawn as standing seam, and that's a stretch for standing seam. To go back, Julia, I am on board with you. The earlier addition, which enclosed the return on the porches, is unfortunate, and the 2000, mid 2000s edition, I guess, or 2009 or whatever it was put on, was, I think, sensitive and attractive. And I'm struggling with this because the proposed addition simply, I think, exacerbates the unfortunate enclosure of the return on the porches and keeps that mass, which the earlier enclosure of the porches, of course, is in plane with the outside edge of the porches, and this addition is just pulled back a little bit, and I think it just exacerbates that unfortunate appearance. And so I'm struggling with it as well.
I noticed staff had a thought of just recessing that new facade a little more, which would help from the public point of view.
It would, and this, if you look at the photographs, I went by and looked at this earlier today, and from the street, if you take all the foliage into consideration, it's not terribly visible, but without the foliage, it's quite visible from the street, and so I think it is. I'm struggling with it. It has a significant impact on what I think was a sensitive and attractive addition in the 2000s.
So maybe an approach would be to just try a little harder to really minimize the public visibility and sort of lessen our purview.
Extending the porch, I think, is fine, rail or no rail. I don't have a big issue with that, with the concept at all. I often like porches without rails because you tend your eyes drawn to the rail instead of to the architecture of the front of the structure. So I don't really have I don't have an issue with the rail, but I'm struggling a little bit with the addition.
Yeah, I guess my struggle has been, I understand the plan alteration, but the exterior elevation, especially if there were no vegetation, which we're really not supposed to consider, they do seem to be kind of fighting with one another a bit, but I do understand where plan-wise on the interior, this is what, is what helps it function, but it's tough, truthfully.
I mean, I can almost imagine the porch getting deeper, and maybe that first floor bay of this new addition could be, enveloped in that porch roof line somehow, and then the upper level is also just kind of recessed a little further, and so that maybe you still read sort of that single porch roof line. I don't know. I'm trying to help the applicant because I do understand what they're after, at the interior and just maybe minimize the effect from the public right of way.
Can I say something? Is that okay? Or am I out of time?
If you want to clarify any inaccuracy, then I'll recognize you to do that.
Okay, no, I just wanted to explain sort of the process and where, the board's concerns and the journey that we were on, some of the options we that we considered that Julia brought up.
Julia, did you have a question?
Sure. Hey, Julie, could you maybe explain a little bit of the evolution of how you got here on your journey?
Sure. Yeah, no, I mean, I'll just say, I hear all your concerns and I had the same struggle. We considered sort of like a more of a porch infill look with the first floor addition portion, but I understand that the board and Historic Charleston Foundation are in general don't like the infilled porch look with a porch like roof line going over the top of it and like a dormer, and the laundry room acting sort of as a dormer that was sort of more pushed back of sorts. But all of that just got very messy in those explorations. So we returned back to just a more simplified version of the massing there, for what it's worth.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, maybe if it were just like staff said, if it were recessed a bit more, I think the impact would be mitigated somewhat, and I might be comfortable with it. I don't know. What do the rest of you think?
I don't have much to add except that I really like that the structure that is there now, and it I don't love that it almost feels like an extension of this closed-in porch, but I understand what the applicant is saying and that what they want to do with the interior can't really be achieved in another way. So I think I fall in line probably with Julia.
Yeah, I think the difficult part is the fight between the addition to the addition, which is tacked onto an addition that really shouldn't be there. At what point the flavor begins to change and maybe be something different. That's my struggle. I mean, this is sort of that like the white volume that's proposed would be better as a W.G. Clark black box. To just not be fighting with roof lines and siding and so forth. I think that's my struggle is. So, when the next owner wants to come and put another addition on, where does that go? I think we're near the end of the road as far as how many additions you can tack on to additions.
Julie, I have one more question, if I may. Is that okay, Lindsay? Can I ask her one more question?
Yes.
Did you or would you consider the notion of just accommodating the kitchen expansion and then doing something different for the laundry? Like just not having this be a 2-story volume, just filling in that one bay of the porch? Did you consider that? I'm just asking.
Yes, we did actually consider that. And I mean, the owner's priority is the kitchen and the porch, but they could certainly, their master bedroom is on the 2nd floor and they don't really have a true laundry room. So they would obviously like the function of the laundry room, but it's not the top priority. So yes, that's something we could reevaluate.
I mean, does any other board member think that's something that might be worth
I would
pursuing?
I would be interested in seeing something like that. It's maybe seems a little less intrusive, but I'll also defer to the architectural minds on the board as to.
Can I, yeah, okay. Never mind, I disagree.
I didn't add anything to the this is Bill. I didn't add anything to the conversation, I guess, because I had the same dilemma as the other board members in deliberations. It's yeah. The addition to an addition, and I was like, one of the first thoughts was like, boy, I wish they could have fixed that 60s edition, made it a little better. But I would never propose a continuation of that and evolving into this. I think I'm more encouraged by what Julia's describing, you know, as potentially, you know, leaving the second level open. But I would, you know, I would think to entertain any other options that Julie could come up with. It's a tough one. So I guess I just have the same sentiments as everybody else. I'm not really adding anything to the dialogue.
So what if we contemplated a deferral and asked them to study just a one-story addition that's incorporated into the porch?
Julia was
space. Would that be?
What you're proposing that that one-story addition sort of read as a porch enclosure on the first floor?
Yeah.
So the extended line of the porch roof would extend to the 60s enclosure.
Yeah, I mean, that depth, I'm sure Julie could figure out what the appropriate depth of the new porch roof would be to not stick out proud at the 60s addition, but
right, yeah, we need to pull back a little bit. And I mean, I definitely think that would be better. I think I would have to see it, because I'm sort of, you know, thinking in the same line I think that Glenn is, and that is just that, you know, where do you stop putting additions, particularly, you know, on category 2 houses and one in such a visible location. But I would certainly, you know, it would be unfair not to give it a shot, I think.
Well, I'll just float a motion, like call it the half a loaf motion, to defer this application with a board comment to restudy the addition as a one-story volume enveloped by the porch structure. Is that too prescriptive? I don't know.
All right. We have a motion on the floor for deferral with a board comment to restudy the addition as a one-story volume enveloped by the porch structure on the. I want to make sure that we're clear that the porch structure on the newest addition.
Oh, yes.
Okay. Okay, do I have a second to Julia's motion?
Second, Glenn.
Glenn, all right, I'll put it to a vote. Bill?
Yay in favor.
Fillmore?
Yay in favor.
Julia?
Yay in favor.
Glenn?
Day in favor.
The chair votes with the majority and the motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Ms. Keys.
Thank you.
Okay, agenda item number 9, 371 King Street. Frankie, if you'll give us an introduction and overview, please.
Hey, we're 371 King Street, TMS 45704020026. Is requesting approval of repairs to terracotta facade, including the approval of replacement tile. It's category 4, circa 1918 in the old and historic district. There is an aerial showing the location on King Street, the facade of the building, some King Street context photos, and Sanborn Maps from 1901, 1944, and 1955. We also found a historic image from the architectural inventory. And then these are just some pictures that I took this morning of the tile that they matched in the color range, and then all together. And I will turn it over to the applicant.
Hello all, can you hear me?
We can.
Okay, this is Brett Lories from Wist Janney Elsner. We're the facade consultant for the project. We did an evaluation of the existing terracotta throughout the facade. The cornice is kind of provided in the report that we gave to the board. You know, there's quite a bit of distress at the cornice level due to corrosion of underlying steel, which is common of this vintage of building. So we plan to replace the terracotta that's distressed. We're going to keep what we can and reuse the pieces that are available, but we're going to replace any of the damaged pieces in kind with new architectural terracotta. We provided shop drawings, setting drawings, and individual piece drawings for the project by Boston Valley Terracotta, who's out of Buffalo, New York. So the terracotta will be replaced in kind. The building will be cleaned, and the intent is to do structural repairs and put it back to the original terracotta. You know, the intent here is that I guess the intent is that we're just to replace in kind, and we've tried to put the repairs in areas where it made sense, and that from a visual perspective that it'll look good when done. So you all looked at the terracotta samples that we went through a process with the manufacturer to match the existing. We feel that color range that they've provided matches the original glaze as best we can. The original glaze has its you know, patina and cracking, and we're going to do our best to match that and clean what's there. So that's all I have. We're replacing in kind and we're going to proposing to rebuild the cornice at the top just back to what it was.
Thank you, Mr. Lories. Do my fellow board members have any questions for the applicant?
I just want to make sure I understand the exact extent of new material proposed. Is it the cornice at wholesale? Is there any field also? Just want to make sure. Maybe a graphic, if you have one, can kind of help illustrate that.
I have a lot of graphics.
And was there a particular page you wanted, Lories?
The terracotta shop drawings, there's a setting drawing within there that shows the extent. Also in our repair drawings, we show, so basically there's a water table at the base of the cornice. Yeah, that kind of shows it there. There's a water table at the base of the cornice. So that water table is and the dentals are in pretty bad shape from corrosion of embedded steel. So those will be replaced. The the parapet flat ashlar panels will be replaced as well. And then there's some isolated units on the pilasters down at ground level around some of the display boards. There's quite a bit of distress down there, and those are going to be replaced. You could probably move ahead in that set. There's a setting drawing that shows setting drawing in sections, which show what's going to be done.
Bill, did that answer your question?
Yes. Thank you.
Any other questions at this time for the applicant?
Fillmore Wilson, I have a quick question. I looked at the photo. Unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to see the sample, but I saw pictures of the sample, and I think it's probably just fine. Most of the damaged units are going to be replaced in kind. Is that correct?
Yes, any units that can be salvaged will be reused. The units that are damaged are going to be replaced in kind with new terracotta material.
And the ones that are going to be reused, if they're damaged, they're going to be repaired.
Yes, there are some on the building that we're going to perform some repairs on.
Okay, and so there'll be a site applied glaze to match.
Most of them are not necessarily a glaze issue. It's there might be a crack, so we would put that. We might do a fine crack repair. We'll put that piece back together and then reset it. But most of the cracked and damaged pieces are going to be are bad enough that we're going to replace them in kind with new terracotta.
Yeah, I thought that was probably the case. I just wanted to get a little clarification. Thank you.
Yes.
Any other board questions at this time? All right, we'll move on to public comment.
We have Anna Catherine Carroll from the Preservation Society.
Thank you. Anna Catherine Carroll with the Preservation Society of Charleston. We are so encouraged to see this proposal come forward, as this has been a very slow-moving project on a building that is clearly in dire need of maintenance. The Historic Garden Theater is one of King Street's most significant buildings with a highly prominent and unique facade, and we are strongly supportive of efforts to restore it. We greatly appreciate the sensitive and detailed submittal that proposes salvage of existing terracotta material, and we do encourage specific direction from the board that as much be saved and reused as possible. And given how long that it has taken to get here, we also urge the board to attach conditions to this approval to ensure that deadlines are clearly established and enforced and that work proceeds at a reasonable pace. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna Catherine. And Allison, do we have anyone else speaking for the public?
No, we do not.
All right. Frankie, if you'll give us city staff comments and recommendations, please.
Okay, just give me 1 minute to get through the slides. Okay. All right, staff requests that they retain and reuse as much of the original tile as possible on the building. And we are requesting monitoring as required by staff to occur at least every 6 months. We are recommending a final approval with board and staff comments.
Thank you, Frankie. Mr. Laurie, did you want to respond to or clarify anything raised in the public comments or the city staff comments and recommendations?
No, I have nothing further.
All right, we'll move into board discussion and a vote at this time.
Well, this is Bill. I'll go ahead and jump in. Yeah, one reason I asked the question, want to make sure that some of the hard work that they put into this got to show up on the screen here. It's a really thorough presentation. I agree with the comments made by staff, and I would definitely support staff's recommendation with comments.
Yeah,
Ask a
Fillmore here.
question. Oh, go ahead, Fillmore.
Yeah, thanks, Bill. I was gonna compliment the submittal. It's extremely thorough and professional, and it's really nice to see that on a building like this. So I applaud the project in all aspects and in support of staff's recommendations.
Could I ask the applicant a quick question about timeline? I hear the Preservation Society's concern, and I was just wondering if he has any definitive sense of, when this will start in earnest and when it should be complete.
Julia, I have the same question. Mr. Lorries, if you could give a timeline.
Yes, I'll do the best that I can. The drawings and specifications are complete. The contractor is under contract, and right now we're waiting on the terracotta manufacturer. Once this color approval has been given to them, we will get a schedule and timeline for them. We have approved, as you see in the submittal, we have approved shop drawings already complete. So, I'll be honest, I can't give an exact timeline, but I know within the next, the intent is within the next 6 months that this thing's going to be under construction and we'll have pieces. The manufacturer, we've gone through all the process, which can take up to 12 months. And we've been through this process about 9 months. So we're relying on them. Everything, the entire team is ready to move on this. I would anticipate it's probably the 3 to 6 month range to get this thing going.
Thank you. I'll echo fellow board members and just compliment you on the documentation. And I feel like you and the terracotta provider are really qualified to do this important job. So I would just go ahead and move for final approval with staff comment number 1 and both staff comments. That's fine.
So you are, okay, so final approval, we have a motion on the floor for final approval with staff comments. Okay. Do I have a second?
Bill, I'll second that.
Thank you, Bill. Put it to a vote. Fillmore?
Yay in favor.
Glenn?
Yay in favor.
Julia?
Yay in favor.
Bill?
Yay in favor.
And the chair votes with the majority and the motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Lorries.
Thank you all. I really appreciate it.
All right, we are on the 10th and final agenda item for the evening for Percy Street. Frankie, if you'll give us an introduction and overview, please.
For Percy Street is TMS 4600803-156. And this is a after the fact request for alterations to the historic house. It is category 4 in Canterbury, Elite Borough, circa 1895, 1905 in the Old City District. There's the area showing the location between Spring and Bogard. Existing photos. And some context photos of Percy Street. We have the 1902 and 1951 Sanborn Maps. And a historic image of the home. And I will turn it over to the applicant.
Good evening. This is Lake Howard, owner and applicant. Starting on the table of contents here, if you would just scroll down, Frankie. So that's good. Thank you. For Percy Street, we purchased last year in March. At the time, it had fire damage, several missing windows, some significant termite and rot damage. And our intent all along was to simply restore the home to its original condition. The plan was not to change anything significantly from an aesthetic standpoint. So we submitted for BAR approval to replace in kind, damaged siding, missing windows. We applied to remove the exterior metal staircase. It was a two family residence at the time, and we were converting it back to single family. So if you'll scroll down, Frankie. I added some additional existing condition photos here just to sort of show, the condition that it was in, with the missing windows, significant damage to siding. There was some significant structural damage in the interior due to termites and rot. Additional photos. So we received staff approval. If you go down, there's additional as or existing condition photos. We received staff approval. It was our intent, obviously, to get over our skis with the BAR staff, but inevitably that's what happened. We had approval to replace siding and windows, and I think our understanding was that we could do that in kind throughout. And in hindsight, it seems that maybe we were really only given approval at the fire damage side of the building, but there was missing windows and rot beyond that. We never planned to change the footprint of the building in any way. So if you continue to scroll down, you can see our BAR staff approved plans. This is where we show the exterior staircase being removed and enclosing the last section of the piazza that was actually still open. Continue, yeah. This was our approved color schedule, and our intent still is to paint and use these colors. And then we get into the current condition. So I think probably where we got over our skis a little bit, the roof, I had a conversation with bar staff about the roof. Our roofer felt that the roof was not repairable. So we proceeded to replace the roof with a hand crimped standing seam to match, color to match. And we thought that we were all good there, but apparently we were not. We've also made a note here. We removed the electrical service on the front of the building and relocated it to the left side of the front elevation. I've also got a note here about 2 windows in the kitchen that we propose to raise the sill on to accommodate kitchen counters on the interior. All of the windows we've installed to date are the BAR approved, single glaze, putty glaze, single pane, wood built. They're Victor built. Historic series. If you want to continue on, Frankie. So another change that we made, I think, through the staff off, we had on this elevation, this is the east elevation, adjacent to the driveway. There's an apartment building adjacent to this. We had approved closing in the piazza above, as I mentioned, but on the original bar approved plan, we showed opening up the piazza at the rear. And once we got in there, we decided to leave it enclosed and put a window in it. And then on the rear elevation to the left here. You can see where we went ahead and enclosed that where it had been open before. Siding on this side was replaced as needed to make structural repairs to the interior. I think if you saw a photo a couple of pages back, that left side, basically that that piazza beam between first and second level was significantly deteriorated, specifically where the stair was and where the porch was open there on the second floor. Also on the rear elevation, you can see the window, the middle window. That's one we raised the sill on to accommodate the kitchen counters on the interior. I'm also proposing to enclose the crawl space on this elevation, which I've noted there, a louver, a picture frame wood siding louver. There's a detail a little further down in the document as well. But why don't you continue on there, Frankie? I'm also asking for approval on this site plan. We're planning to replace the existing drive and extend it a little bit further into the lot with a grass pave in the center. This is similar detail to what was done next door at 6 Percy Street, a project that was recently renovated. We're also asking for approval to install a privacy fence that matches the neighbor's fence there. I've got a detail on that further down the document. The adjacent property, as I mentioned, is an apartment building. And so the idea is to put in a 6-foot privacy fence, paint it, but to provide privacy from the apartment building that has several, obviously, windows you can see there in the photos at the top. You want to continue on, Frankie?
Mr. Howard, you got about 2 minutes left.
Okay. Here's some typical details I referenced. That's the crawl space detail. This is the fence detail. And then this is to the right is the as-built condition of the windows that we've installed. We did everything we could to match the existing condition with an additional sill there that projects out like a lot of the historic window sills you see around town. Continue on. And then I added additional photos of the current condition. And again, I just want to reiterate that siding was replaced in kind. It is wood siding. The exposure is to match the existing. We did have to pull off some to put the new roof on, which you can see there on the eyebrows. Continue on. And this is a typical window finish in this photo, and then additional photos of the crawl space I'm looking to enclose. Frankie, do you mind scrolling through just real quick? I've got additional windows that we've stopped doing anything on because we obviously run into this issue with the BAR. So I'd like approval to continue on with replacing the windows that are damaged. And then the 3 windows in the front, I would propose just to rebuild sashes as needed to fit those openings exactly. And to maintain all of the siding that's there, the scallop siding in the front.
Thank you, Mr. Howard. Do my fellow board members have any questions for the applicant?
Oh, go ahead.
Okay, I was just going to say on the approved plans, it referenced staff conditions, but I didn't see those anywhere provided. I was just wondering if anybody has those.
We do. I don't know that we included them in the presentation, but I can pull them up really quickly if you need to.
And then for the applicant, somewhere in the documentation, it mentioned Victor built Palmetto series, but you're saying you used the historic series. Is that what you're saying? The wood? It's wood or not wood?
Yes, they are wood. Yes, ma'am.
And but they're like vinyl jam liners that are exposed on that series, I think, right?
No, ma'am, I don't believe so. I would have to check though.
These are the staff comments. That was final demo for fire damage.
Okay, thank you.
Would you like me to scroll through the comments?
No, that's fine. Thank you.
Fillmore, did you have a question?
I think I do. I'm trying to sort this out. It's a little complicated trying to figure out. I have a question for staff first. Is there a stop work on this project?
There was a hold put on some additional permits that were applied for.
Okay, but so there's not a stop work. Okay, that was a question I had. The other thing is, have the windows in the front of the house been replaced?
No, sir.
I beg your pardon?
No, sir.
No, they have not. Okay, so
No.
in the drawings, the 2/2 show, I mean, the 1/1 shown on that drawing are the windows that are there currently or theoretically originally. Is that correct?
On the lower level, on the upper level, there are 2 new windows.
And what was the light configuration of the original windows?
It was all over the board, really.
I mean, on the front, just on the front.
Could you go back to the first couple pages of the existing condition?
This one?
Yeah, I think if you keep going up, there might be a better photo. Yeah, you can see it there on the left side.
Yeah. I'm trying to, I've got it up on my computer and I'm trying to, I can get a bigger view of it. I can't tell what the light configuration is, I don't think. Okay, so I mean, so we're not sure about the light configuration on the original window is my question.
Which one specifically?
On the front of the house, on the second floor of the front of the house.
Second floor of the front of the house, there was no divided lights, I think. They were 1/1.
They were 1/1s. Okay.
I
thank
think
you.
so, yes.
This is the historic image. And that was the Google Street View we had.
I'll just point out that number 6, I think it's clearly a sister house, and it's I think still got the original light patterns on the front and the sides.
Any other board questions at this time? All right, we'll move on to public comment.
We have Anna Catherine Carroll with the Preservation Society.
Thank you. Anna Catherine Carroll with the Preservation Society. It is unfortunate that any work took place without the benefit of careful review to understand if materials that were removed truly required replacement. Once historic material is gone, it is gone forever, and our processes are in place to ensure that the integrity of Charleston's historic districts is preserved. However, we do appreciate the applicant compiling a thorough submittal that provides sound understanding of the work that has been done to date. Based on our review of the presentation, it appears that a majority of replacement materials are compatible, but staff should be given the authority to review each of these choices carefully and require modifications as necessary so that all materials match what previously existed. And we appreciate in-depth conversation about that this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna Catherine. Allison, is that everyone?
That's everyone.
All right. Frankie, if you'll give us city staff comments and recommendations, please.
Staff had a few observations. This project is coming to the board following a hold being placed on the property's permits and a request to present to the board after seeing that work completed, that the work completed did not match plans approved by BAR staff. And there were some piecemealing permits which accumulated to a larger scope of work. Some of this work is after the fact, some has not adhered to BAR approved drawings, and some portions of the scope have not been reviewed per the staff request to submit to the board. The south elevation is the side primarily visible to the street due to the orientation of the lot. Window locations were swapped out on the south elevation without updating plans and obtaining a new BAR review. A second story window on the south elevation was infilled, not for BAR approval. The proposal mentions an unapproved roof replacement and one extant chimney is visible in the applicant's photos showing the replaced roof. However, it is unclear if the second previously existing chimney is still intact. For staff comments on the south elevation, the last fragments of the original piazza cornice and columns were to remain on the first floor infill piazza. The cornice and the rearmost column have since been removed. They're visible in the current photos. This erases any remnants of the original piazza form. This was not pointed out in these after the fact plans, and these elements need to be replaced as they are the remaining portions of a character defining feature of a Charleston single house. Window replacement was previously approved, but a cut sheet for the specific make and manufacturer details of replacement windows and doors was requested in June of last year, and it's not been provided. Regarding the landscaping, artificial turf is typically not appropriate within historic districts. And while areas not visible from public right-of-way are outside of BAR purview, we would discourage its use, and if found to be visible, it would need to be a permeable surface. And we would also like to confirm the status of that second chimney. For staff recommendations, we recommend final approval with board and staff comments.
Thank you, Frank. Mr. Howard, would you like to respond to or clarify anything raised in public comment or in the city staff comments and recommendations?
Yes. Number one, Frankie, I'm not exactly sure where that is, but happy to address it. And I think, on number two probably boils down to where the misunderstanding was on my part with the staff comments. I did not pick up on those comments. And that's part of the reason for the misunderstanding. Happy to provide that. Artificial turf, no comment. And then the status of the second chimney is still there. We proposed, and it's not on these plans, but we did just simply put a sheet metal or a metal cap on it because it's just open that matches the roof.
Thank you, Mr. Howard. All right, I'll open it up for board discussion and a vote at this time.
So Bill, I'll go ahead and jump in. There are a lot of things going on here, moving parts. It appears some things were approved at staff level, some things were not approved, some things are still in flux. I do trust staff to sort out the issues. I guess I do raise question and just make sure that it's pretty clear. For example, concerning say enclosing piazzas, things like that. Is that fairly clear of what we would be if we do go with staff's recommendation for final approval. Those items are subject to staff's scrutiny and discretion going forward. Is that what we're understanding with this? I just want to make sure. In other words, reversal of potentially some work that staff would deem inappropriate. I guess that's a question of staff or Tori.
Hey there. So working on some other things and listening at the same time. So your question was, are there things that once in the current proposal, now that we've gotten a proposal that shows what the actual work is, would they be things that we don't approve of?
Yes. And
yeah,
with,
I think the main one is the one that's pointed out in number 1. This structure had it had what was an open porch or piazza at the rear southeast corner of the property of the house. And while the drawings that were reviewed last summer do indicate that that was going to be, actually those indicate that that was going to be open, if that was my understanding, and now it's remains enclosed and a window added. But the big concern is that the trim, you know, the what would have been a porch beam or a breast beam and the cornice up there, that's been removed, and the columns were removed that actually showed up in the drawings that were looked at back in July. Secondly, I gotta look this one up, and Frankie and Allison may have to help me remember that. That happened, there was a color review back in July or June, and then there was, do y'all remember what else was in that application? I think, I don't remember.
There was a removal of siding for fire damage at one point.
Fire damage. It was the fire damage one. Yes. So I think that, you know, things just went way beyond their scope. And while we allowed some removal of items for fire damage, we were expecting some cut sheets, and Linda very well documented what was needed to come back. And she made it very clear what the scope of the approval was. And I'm happy to pull that up.
okay, well, I don't want to, you know, belay it too much, Tori. I guess really the main question I was getting around to is, I see a recommendation for final approval with board and staff comments, but I didn't know if there were still potentially outstanding items or concerns that would require maybe a final approval by staff. In other words, you're better situated to sort of be arbiters of this project going forward. And I would like to be able to give you the authority to do that. If we do go forward with some degree of approval, I'd like for it to still be open to the point that your concerns are addressed and should be addressed for that final approval.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
Right.
If you want to make your motion so that it brings that authority into, you know, staff purview, we are happy to work with it. I just found another email from back in April. So this is going on for a while, where there's, you know, this communication and that kind of thing, where we've asked for explicit information. And so we are very happy to work on it and bring it to closure. But there were so many things that we just felt like this is going beyond where it should have, and it needs to have somebody else look at it.
Yeah.
Well, or I mean, it sounds like you need really good, thorough documentation of everything here.
Yes.
Along with a game plan to replace whatever may need to be replaced. If staff feels comfortable with that being pawned off on them, then I'm okay with that. Or do we need to give directive and let it come back and be one thorough board review so that the owner has a good game plan to resolve all of it and wrap up his project?
Yeah, well, we definitely want your direction tonight. And if that direction is it comes back to a final review, with you guys, or you want us to work out the details? But the big picture is okay and it receives final approval. We're okay either way.
I just find a little bit of it confusing as far as what is or isn't there and what has or hasn't been removed and with or without permission.
I can understand the confusion, and we've had our heads on it for a while, and I will admit, when we were looking at the drawings, it's a lot to take in and a lot to kind of get your head around, especially when you haven't been in it for a while. So we are very understanding of that as well. I mean, I'm
Okay.
sorry.
No. It is. I spent a good bit of time with the drawings trying to figure them out. And it's tough because even like I think the proposed elevations show all 1/1 windows where that's not, just for a small example, it's not clear what was there when they arrived, what they've done, and what they plan to do to finish. It's really hard to follow. And I noticed things like if Frankie or Allison could go to the front elevation, like photographs of what it was when they arrived versus now, it looks like they've just sort of wrapped the parapet with metal, whereas it used to have siding like a traditional parapet would have. Yeah, there's the original. I think photographs would be best, but oh gosh. And again, that's not the greatest photograph to see it, but there was siding on the parapet. It was a kind of a normal traditional parapet, and now somehow it's just wrapped with metal.
It's just not complete. I'm sorry to interject, but we will be siding that parapet.
All right, and then the windows that they've used, I do think that those have exposed jam liners, vinyl jam liners, which in my experience, wouldn't have been approved, and those liners would need to be concealed. And then, the south elevation really has changed a lot from what it was, and seems almost arbitrary in terms of what you're seeing on the exterior. I don't think I've ever requested or received approval to just lift an old window because of a kitchen counter, so that troubles me a little bit. And then again, number 6, Percy, really does look like it has all the original light patterns. I think it was 1/1 on the front, which at a time was more precious and expensive than the 6/6 that seemed to be used on the side of number 6. So I think that would be the appropriate light pattern to have in this restoration. And you can even see some of the 6/6 windows in the fire damage photographs. So I think that's what was there. And now it's just all going to 2/2 for some reason. So I don't know. I'm troubled by how this has evolved. I think it's a wonderful house, and I'm sure that the owners want to do right by it, but I just think a lot of mistakes have been made. And I think it's an important, beautiful house that deserves to be restored properly.
Yeah, and to echo what Julia just said, I think it seems to me that the intent is there. It just may have missed, or not may have, it has missed some detailed guidance that needed to be given in the approval, permitting, design, restoration realm. And unfortunately, I think some missteps have been made with the wrong materials and the wrong decisions. And I would love to see them be able to get on a correct path to finish the project and to finish it well and have a restoration to really be proud of.
I would love to interject one thing, and I think this is just a reflection of how thin our staff is right now. But I would, this is kind of for the applicant's sake. I found some emails. He had reached out prior to Christmas and on January 4th, desiring to meet with our team. Actually, he emailed me in Lawrence, and you know, it didn't have anything to do with Lawrence, but he did reach out to me, and I flagged it, and you know, there's just a whole lot going on, and so there was probably some intent to get our concerns prior to the board meeting, and I apologize.
Well, Tori, would it help if y'all were able to have an on-site meeting with him to come up with a list of things that are important to address, and then things that can be remedied without, without going back to the drawing board entirely?
We're fine to do that, and if we can't reach an agreement, we could come back to the board. And if there are concerns that you guys have tonight that you want to put out there that we can look at or address when we take that meeting.
I mean, I don't want to speak for everyone else. I think it sounds like, and I know, I mean, I get it. You can't be everywhere. And I think in this case where you have a house that has had some damage, it's been altered, but it's still, underlying, it's a good house. And I think it's important for staff or board or whomever to review the fabric and decide what should be kept and can be kept, and what should be rebuilt. So, I mean, I would be in favor of allowing, not allowing, but encouraging an on-site review. That way he really does have a laundry list of things that he needs to tackle instead of potentially spinning his wheels.
I'm very comfortable with that. We have been on site, but we did not meet with him when we were there. I'm sure we missed each other because there was work going on, but that would be okay to be part of the motion, I believe, as well.
Phil here. I'm in agreement with what Glenn has said, and certainly to emphasize what Julia has said. And the reason I was asking about the light pattern on the windows, because it seems like there wasn't a lot of attention paid to, even if they're single pane windows and the intention was good, there wasn't much attention. The intention was good. There wasn't much attention paid to trying to put windows with original light patterns in the right locations. And it's that sort of thing that, that I think needs to be, that's just a small example of I think what is going wrong, and work is continuing. And so I feel like without a real sit down and a laundry list, as Glenn said, that the mistakes are likely to continue to be made.
Yeah, if it had come through the proper channels and we had seen clear drawings of what was existing and what was proposed, it would be on a good path now. But it's not. And I can hear Robert Gurley somehow in the back of my mind questioning if we would ever give final approval to an after the fact application. I think he'd be like, just on principle, you have to deny that.
Yeah. Well, and I think that, Julia, is our precedent, is that we generally don't approve after the fact. But I mean, in this case, I am not at all trying to kick a can down the road, especially if they are there working. But I'm more inclined to suggest, having spent the amount of time we've spent looking at it, talking about it, I don't want to punt and say defer, but I really feel that this probably warrants a deferral for an owner, contractor, staff, on-site collective review, mandatory that all three of those parties be present together, period.
I agree, Glenn, 100%. And I think it's also in my mind because, again, staff has a record of what they did approve. And so they're going to know the deference of focusing on really all the issues. So I'm 100% in agreement with your suggestion of deferral, and then pending that meeting with staff and involved parties on site to get that list together.
And work really shouldn't be going on. So I would encourage that meeting to occur ASAP.
And I'm sorry, I keep interjecting tonight. The date that we went out and we were on site, work was going on, but I can't say that it has happened after the hold. I'm not sure. So
I went by there today and work was going on.
Okay.
I asked if there was a stop work order because I wasn't sure if there was that, and clearly work was going on when I went by there today.
Okay. Thank you.
Oh, Tori, are you okay with that suggestion?
To defer?
Yeah, pending a staff meeting on site to really compose a list of issues more concisely. And then I would trust your evaluation to weigh out whether then it needs to, come back for the board to look at it as in total, or it's something, you guys, can handle.
I think it's great. I would be fine if you defer it and say, bring it back to the board. We will definitely get on meeting with them. I think there has been a lot of work that has gone on that we would just like to get, I think it's a message has been sent that it's got to stop, and we've got to, it's got to be reviewed and looked at, and everybody's had great comments tonight. So we are good with the deferral. And this probably, in hindsight, what we should have recommended. Some of us are kind of new.
Well, but I think that you could potentially resolve everything on site together without having to come back to the board. I mean, there is a recipe and there are a lot of photos. So I think a lot of these decisions could be handled without spending too much time on the applicant's owner's behalf. It's more a matter of what is or isn't approved and how to fix it.
Okay. Yeah.
And if a board group meeting is necessary, then I'm sure we're all happy to meet there.
All right. Yeah, that's good. We're comfortable.
Well, I'm gonna try something then. I guess I'll try a motion then. I'll make a motion for deferral, pending a meeting on site between staff, the owners, and contractors to evaluate and compose a concise list of issues, and staff's discretion to determine if those issues can be handled at staff level or need to return to the board. That's open-ended.
Okay. We have a motion on the floor for deferral pending a meeting on site with city staff, the owners and contractors to evaluate and compose a comprehensive list of issues. And then staff discretion as to whether those issues need to return to the board. Bill, does that capture it? All right.
Yes.
Do I have a second to Bill's motion?
Second.
Glenn. All right, I'll put it to a vote. Julia?
Yay in favor.
Fillmore?
Yay in favor.
Bill?
Yay in favor.
Glenn?
Yay in favor.
Chair votes with the majority and the motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Howard. We've now
Thanks for your time.
come to the end of our agenda. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Yes, please.
All in favor?
Yay.
Bye. Thank you.
Opposed? Thank you, everyone.
Thanks,
you guys.
and Allison and Frankie. Thank you guys.
Great job, guys.
Thanks for
Thank you.
Glenn, you're
Thank you,
not allowed
guys.
to laugh.
Oh,
Yeah, I am-